The Quick Diz Takes podcast is a Quick Diz Takes production.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner.
Oh boy. We now resume with part 2 of our interview with former cast member Andy Mack.
You said you can go on rides. You sick of any rides? Like, is there a point like maybe not now sick of it, but like when you were there, like we went on that like 10 times yesterday, or like you kind of just didn't want to go on that after a while, or even still don't want to go.
I wouldn't necessarily say rides themselves. I guess if you're it's kind of a complex answer, but rides itself, I would say the one that cast members would tend to avoid for obvious reasons was Splash Mountain, just because you don't want to get soaking wet all the time. Sometimes it's nice when it's really hot out, but a lot of times the water, if you've gone on it and been there long enough, the water can sometimes smell, kind of like after you're in a pool for a long time, so your clothes start to smell. So especially, if you're walking around soaking wet, or at least partially soaking wet, and you have your wallet and keys and phone or whatever, it's not the most enjoyable experience to walk around Florida when you have clothes stuck to you and they eventually get really hot and sweaty. Or it smells. A lot of times cast members, myself included, would go before your shift. If I had to work at night, I'd go to the park early just because I had to plan it with all the bus transportation issues. I would tell you, I told you, you'd be there and be like, well, I might as well go early and just kind of ride some rides and kill some time. No one's going to go on Splash Mountain, then get their clothes wet, then put them in a locker and change for the day, and then come back 8 hours later and have, smelly clothes. I would say, to answer your question about being sick, there was certain rides you would avoid just because of the situation, which was most of Fantasyland. It's just so chaotic. It's such a bottleneck there of kids screaming that it's like, do I really want to wait in even a small line as a cast member? Do I want to wait and go through that? Is it worth going on Peter Pan for, what is that ride, 40 seconds total? Something like that. It's like, it's the shortest ride in the world, although it's awesome, but you have to gauge the kind of, is it worth this? Once or twice is enough. You try and go on all the mountains are the ones that everyone wants to go to. But Splash Mountain, for obvious reasons, most people didn't want to get wet.
And if you were in the park with like other cast members, you're not working, could you, like, I don't feel like walking across with people. Do you ever like jump down to the utilidors, or is that frowned upon?
So if I were with other cast members, you could do it. We did it because what are they going to say? They think that you're coming in to work. There's lots of people in the tunnels. I realize now that you don't know it because, you just don't know.
Because you were in regular clothes, or if you like. Yeah,
well, there is a lot of people in regular clothes down there because they're going to costuming. They're going to the cafeteria, not necessarily in the far reaches of the tunnel where you're like, why are you back here? Yeah. But it has happened. It's not. It's frowned upon to do what you're doing, but you can get away with doing it because so many people are busy with what they're doing that there's lots of people in there in plain clothes. There's not a ton. You're in the minority of people that are in plain clothes, but you could essentially do it. I think I might have done it once or twice, but you kind of knew like I shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. I don't think I ever did it with other cast members. I think I did it once by myself to get to another edge of the park to meet somebody. But you could do it. It just was probably frowned upon.
Did you ever even if you had the day off, did you ever just go like, I'm just going to go walk around the utilidors and just explore? Or is that like a no-no too?
Did you find Walt's frozen head? That's what he wants to know.
Just to go like, what's in this room? What's over here?
Debunk the myth.
So I never did it on my days off just because it was kind of intimidating because you could get lost. I mean, there's a lot more tunnels down. It's not just the layout of the Magic Kingdom. You have to think of all the engineering rooms, all the sound rooms, all the, waste removal rooms, all the tunnels, the tubes that are there that suck out all the garbage and everything else. There's all maintenance rooms for all of that. So it's the entire layout of the park with all these antechambers and anterooms spread off and hallways spread off of there. But the main layout of the park is the kind of central nervous system of that, and then everything else branches off. Have I walked around the tunnels? Yeah, I want to say I did it once, but I got freaked out because I got to a point where I didn't know where I was. And all along the walls, they have color. Everything is color coded, so you kind of know where you are.
Yeah.
But it's disorienting because you see signs to, go this way, and you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. You're like, I don't know where I am anymore. I don't know, because it doesn't really tell. There's plaques on the doors if you're by a door that says this way to Tomorrowland, or, space exit, or whatever, something more specific. But a lot of times it's just like engineering 456. And you're just like, I don't know where I probably shouldn't be over here. I don't think I ever wandered around the tunnels on my days off, but there were a few times where I went either long before my shift or after my shift where I would just kind of meander around. But a lot of times there's people on those carts or bikes, or they're having tours. Because now when I worked there, they had just started, at least from my recollection, they had just started giving some of the VIP tours down there.
Oh, yeah.
So even that was kind of, you had to still be on, quote unquote. You couldn't be joking around and off stage, because there's always a chance that one of the higher ups could be walking by, or a tour could be walking by. So you didn't really want to just be aimlessly walking around. But it was fun to go. I did go to quite a bit of it. I don't think it's not as straightforward as like I went down what was under Main Street and then I circled around to Fantasyland and went back around to Main Street. I never tried that because I got so lost by the time I got to what I assumed was around Fantasyland. Because I just kept looking in rooms and going down hallways, and then I'm like, I don't know where I am anymore, and just kind of follow. I just kind of like, it was like Theseus in the Minotaur. I just kind of like held onto the wall and hopefully had a string and could find my way back.
He was going back and forth through the doors like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, pretty much. They did show us one of the cool things. They showed us one of the audio rooms when we were that first tour that I was telling you about. They went into one of the engineering rooms, and it looks like just computer terminals, but you could pull them out, like what you see in any like sci-fi tech government movie where they have like a war room with all the hacker movie, anything like that. And the engineer that was talking to us was like, watch this, and he pulls out something and presses a button, and it's the crow from the Haunted Mansion. Just the sound effect. It's all the sound library for everything for the Haunted Mansion, and he's just like touching buttons randomly, pulling things out and touching buttons. And I would be like, don't touch that, please don't touch it. I don't know what that does. And he's making different sound effects from the mansion. It's like each little individual audio file for the 10,000 different effects that are in Haunted Mansion. But it was crazy to be like, oh, through this door, if you just pull this out and touch buttons, you're accessing the Haunted Mansion's nervous system.
That's pretty dang cool, man.
Yeah,
I gotta say. My last question before we move on, talk about your mom's experience a little bit, was just I'll kind of couple the questions together. Oddest guest experience and most memorable, either guest experience or I guess experience in general as an employee.
So the
cast member, I'm sorry.
Oddest one, yeah, come on. The oddest one is do you even Disney, bro? The oddest one by far was I had a lady. I was out at Greeter. In fact, if I remember correct, I was at Greeter 2, which was further out. It was the middle of the summer because I worked there from January to August. So I got through the hot months, the busy months, especially towards the end. And so there was a person right at the front of Space Mountain at Greeter where they would check heights with the kind of upside down hockey stick that they have. And then Greeter 2 was further out, which is where I was at this particular incident. And I also had the kind of hockey stick to check height. So I'm just kind of holding the stick in my, my Space Mountain outfit. And I see this lady making a beeline for me. And I'm like, oh, well, this always ends well. And so she starts yelling at me in Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish, and I felt really bad. And she has a map in front of her, but she's hitting the map so hard that I can't see what she's doing or what she's pointing at, and I can't understand what she's saying, other than the fact I can clearly tell she's not pleased. And so I kind of talk her off the ledge, and I tell her, let me see the map, let me come around to you. So I went around to her, and she's looking at me and looking at the map and slamming her finger down, trying to indicate she clearly wants to go to this specific area on this map. Lo and behold, she's holding a Universal Studios map. And the ride she's pointing to is King Kong. And I don't know how you would have handled this, but I don't know how to speak Spanish let alone how to speak Spanish well enough to tell them that this is not the map for this park, and that's not King Kong,
Go out
and
the front.
King Kong doesn't exist in this park. Eventually, all I could tell her was I got someone from guest relations to come walk with her, and I just said it's that way. I'm even doing the Disney point. It's that way, back up towards Main Street, and guest relations will help you. But I remember just being like, how does that happen? Where did you get that map? And at what point did you think you were in that park? And at what point did you think there was a giant gorilla ride here?
Although there are a lot of people that get confused, not when they're there, but like in general, about the idea of like Disney and Universal. Like they see commercials, they think the attractions are somehow like it's some big, like
we would get that
unified thing going on.
They would ask us where Universal was, or you could clearly see kids wearing Universal stuff at Disney to be cool, to be different, and vice versa. You'd go to Universal, because I had a season pass to Universal when I was
little
Disney.
punks.
And you would see the people at Universal wearing Disney stuff just to be different. But yeah, you would see. I think the thing that I would get asked a lot outside of stuff at the particular park and the particular ride was people would be mad that they couldn't go to the other Disney World parks. Much like, and this is going to be oddly specific, just for the two of you guys and maybe some of the listeners, whenever they show Patriots games, what B-roll footage do they show? They show Faneuil Hall, and they show Quincy Market, and they show Fenway.
Exactly. Yep.
And you're like, I don't know if you guys understand geography. These things are not near each other.
I know. I always say that too.
And so the same thing happens at Disney World for obvious reasons. Just the same thing like the football broadcasts. They show Spaceship Earth, and they show Test Track, and they show Splash Mountain, and they show Tower of Terror, as if these things are all within walking distance of each other. And so you'd get a lot of people that were frustrated that, I don't want to say they were lied to, because it's not lying, but they didn't do their homework well enough, and they didn't understand the concept that these parks are not close to each other. You have to take a tram or a bus or a Uber or Lyft or whatever to get to these other parks. So a lot of people's days would be screwed up because they would have these very specific, detailed, minute plans, and then come to find out you can't just walk out. It's not like Disneyland where you walk across the Esplanade and California Adventure's right there. You walk out of Disney World of the Magic Kingdom, there's no other parks there.
Nope.
You can't even walk back to your car, really. You got to take a monitor back to your car.
Yep.
Yeah. I had to do like one of the hitchhiking ghosts to get home.
There you go.
Okay, so to answer your other question, the most memorable one, I have two. They're very, very different from each other. The first one is we would help a lot of Make-A-Wish kids, which was one of the coolest and most satisfying things of my life, to help those kids out, because they would come in all the time and just never down, never upset, never felt bad for themselves of what they were going through. I can't imagine the amount of courage it took to be, let alone out of a hospital, but to be dealing with how much stress and just how much fatigue it takes to go around Disney World if you're one of these kids who are battling life-threatening illnesses. I would get exhausted because I'm fat and would walk around, Tomorrowland. I can't imagine how these kids did it. But anyway, I had a little girl who came in, and they were watching, she was in line, and they were watching people, and I saw her initially because she had the Make-A-Wish button on, and I think I was getting bumped out, or I was done for the day, or something happened where I had more time than normal, where I couldn't just leave my position and do what I'm about to tell you. But I went up to her, and her dad, she was with her dad, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I make a little magic for you? How about, you want to go ride right now?" And she just, her jaw dropped, and her dad was like, what? And so I literally took them from the end of the line, or near the end of the line, out by Greeter, where you get on the ride, and I walked them past everyone else in the Fast Pass line. I literally brought them up to the cast member at Grouper who was getting people on. I said, "Hey, I'm bringing these two people on. Can they get on right now?" And they were kind as can be to these two guests, the little girl and her dad. She was probably about 8, 10, something like that, and got her right on the ride. She didn't know, and her dad didn't know, that you exit downstairs. So she went on the ride and did everything and was having a blast. And I ran down the ramp, because all it is a ramp, because unload and load are literally on top of each other. So I just went down the little back, and back behind where the lines are, there's a little ramp to get down to unload. And I just walked down there. So by the time they got off the ride or got to the exit to get out of the rocket, I was standing there waiting for them. And said, "Hey, did you have fun?" And she was, "Oh my gosh, this is like the best thing I've ever done." The dad was hysterical because she was laughing so hard. And I said, "You want to go again?" And she was like, "Oh my God." So I took them up and took them back up the ramp that I had gone down to unload and let them ride all over again, just 2 in a row. And I thought nothing of it. It was just really fun. It was great to make her day and make her dad's day. And about a week later, I'm at grouper or merge. I'm at one of the inside positions, and I get a tap on the shoulder or a radio call. I can't remember which, from one of the other cast members saying, "Hey, the manager wants to speak to you." I think it was this lady Kathy, and I'm like, "Oh, great! You know, what did I do now? Did I not shave for an hour?" And so I go over to where the manager is, and she's with another person, and it's all obviously dark in there, so you can't really see a whole lot unless you're really squinting. And even then, I'm not thinking that this guy's with her. I don't know what's happening. And I walk up, and lo and behold, it's the dad. And he says that the little girl had just passed away, but it was the highlight of her trip and one of the nicest things he's ever seen done for somebody. And I actually gave her, before she left, I gave her, they have mouse or not certificates. I have one in the box behind me here. But it's just a simple certificate, like what you'd get for like a little kid puts on the fridge, but it has Mickey on it, and it has a space rocket, and you write their name on it. And it's like an award thing that you give. And I made one for her and gave it to her. And he's like, she never let go of it, and she kept it by her bed at all times. And I just wanted to personally thank you. I don't know how this guy got in. I don't know how he found me. It's still to this day is like unfathomable how I don't know. I didn't think of it at the time. I was just kind of almost in tears, being like, "Oh my God, this is one of the nicest things that's ever happened. Thank you so much." I was just trying to do my job. I knew it was special, but I didn't realize how special with obviously the circumstances that happened. But I didn't think about it till many years later when I was telling that to someone, and they said, "How did that guy get in?" And I was like, I don't know. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, did he buy another ticket to get in? Did he go by himself? Because he wasn't with anyone else. I mean, maybe he had a wife or other kids who were somewhere else that I never saw, but I don't know how he did this. And then happened to ask if I was there that day, and I happened to be there, and then waited in line to get to the man, like all these other things that I never thought about. And I was just blown away at how awesome it is. Like that tells you what this means to people when they're willing to have their dying wish be to go to the place that you go to work on a Wednesday. That's all you need to know. We're like, okay, what I'm doing means more than just a job. Literally her dying wish was to go to Disney World, and I got to make a little bit of magic for her and her dad, and to have her not be in pain for an hour. Like, that's crazy. And you don't realize the impact that it has on people when you do stuff like this, or when you go to Disney, both as a cast member or a guest, and you just realize, like, wow, the people care here. So I'm glad I made it through that without crying, because that story is really emotional for me, because that meant a lot to me. The other story is I'll end this segment on a funnier note. I don't think I've ever told you guys this story, but on grad nights, the park closes, at least when I was there, between about 2 or 3 in the morning. And that's when the park closes. So then you're there as a cast member for at least an hour or so afterwards to shut everything down, to cycle everything, though, to get all the stuff from the floor and package it up for Main Street. And one of the exits I took as one of the cast members, I didn't have to stay for cleanup that day. They let me go. So I went out the back entrance to Space Mountain, which is at the very back of the building. And if you know the layout of the park, if you're looking down on a map of the park, Space Mountain is the furthest out to the right. I mean, this is now Tron is kind of in that general area, but at the time Tron didn't exist. And the back door was up against essentially what's a berm and a moat, and then a fence. And then there's the one of the roads, or access road, or a highway or something's beyond there, but it's the edge of the park for all intents and purposes. And so there's a little utility door there for cast members, and there's a tiny little walkway that just follows the contour of Space Mountain, because it's a big circle. and then it just brings you back out to the front of the park or to an entrance door to go down into the tunnels. So at 2 or 3 in the morning, or actually by this point, probably 3 or 4 in the morning, it's still pitch dark out, and I'm leaving, and there's just a little utility light next to the door. And there's nothing else because there's no guests back there, so they don't have it fancy, they don't have it well lit or anything. It's just an access walkway on the ground for cast members, and then it's bushes and trees, slopes down to a moat, slopes back up on grass, and then there's a fence and then a road. And so I'm walking along this, maybe had taken 10 steps along this little concrete walkway, and I hear this giant hissing noise, and I'm like, what is? At first I thought it was an alarm, because it was way louder than a cat hiss or a balloon, air getting let out of a balloon. It sounded like a cat hiss if you lowered the decibel level on it 50% and made it 4 times louder. And I see movement on the ground, and I backed up into the light again that was right there, and it kind of walks 1 or 2 steps forward, and it's a 6-foot alligator.
Jeez.
And I was like, oh, okay, so we're doing this now. And there was a minute, I was too scared to do it, but there was a minute where I was like, what if I just jump over him? Because there's nobody here. It's not like there's other cast members that are with me that can help me. And I can't go back into the door because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it's like an emergency exit where you can't go back in once you're out. But there is a phone there, or I maybe it had a radio. I had some sort of communication, but for a moment I was like, because he wasn't giant, 6 feet from head to the end of his tail. So he wasn't a scary Steve Irwin alligator where you're like, I'm going to die if I do this. He probably still might have taken my legs or arms off, and I didn't do it. But there was at least a moment where I'm like, maybe I could. But anyway, so I radioed for maintenance, and meanwhile, this thing's hissing the whole time. I don't know if you've ever heard an alligator hiss. I didn't know they did that until this happened. And then I looked it up on nature documentaries with David Attenborough, and they clearly do this. I didn't know they did that. It's really intimidating because it sounds like something you've never heard before. And then maintenance comes, and this guy couldn't have been more relaxed. He had a flashlight and just went, shoo, with the flashlight. It's not a physical object, it's light. And he went, shoo, with a flashlight. And the alligator just turned around and went back down into the moat. And I was just like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, sorry. He hangs out every once in a while. I'm like, that's not something you want hanging out here. I did not know they had alligators there, but apparently in the moat they get in. I mean, it makes sense. It's Florida, but you just assume like that kind of thing doesn't happen at the Magic Kingdom. Maybe at one of the resorts where that unfortunate, incident happened with the little boy.
Yeah.
But this is inside. He was inside of the fence. I don't know how he got inside of the fence to be in the moat, because it's not that high. It's almost like a drainage moat. It's probably only, I don't know, maybe 10 feet across, this moat. And it just kind of circles most of that area just as an extra barrier for the park. It's not big enough for a full-sized alligator, so I don't know where he came from. I don't know where he went, but this guy shoot him away with a flashlight like a Jedi Knight, and I was left, like the damsel in distress, oh, thank you, sir, for saving my life. And and just went about my business. And he was just like, you're welcome. It happens all the time. I'm like, that's not something people probably should hear, that you're shooing away alligators on a semi-regular basis.
It's got a clock in it, and every time Andy goes back to Disney World, he can hear it.
Right? It was a lot like, yeah.
Tick tock, tick tock.
Just tick tock. I have both of my hands, thankfully. That was the seeing the alligator wasn't as crazy in retrospect. At the time, it was nuts to be like, oh my God, an alligator. The older I get, the more I am flabbergasted by how nonchalant the maintenance worker was. That it was just like, it might as well have been like a broom that fell over and he was just retrieving this broom. And I was just like, I was like a Tom and Jerry cartoon on a chair with my skirt up, screaming about this animal or this broom, and ended up being an alligator. But he was so nonchalant and just wafted it away with a beam of light from a maintenance flashlight. It was like the manliest thing I've ever seen on accident.
He must have done it a lot, I guess.
He sounded like it was something that happened all the time. I don't know where else you find alligators roaming around rides, because I was literally from me to like the back wall behind me was where the bushes are. So I couldn't actually. It's closer than that. It's literally a concrete walkway the size of like a sidewalk, and then it's grass and bushes. So I can't really go around him because there's bushes right there. But it was just like mind blowing that there's a 6-foot alligator just meandering around the back of the ride.
That is funny. Guy must have been like rolling his eyes, like, oh, another cast member, this damn alligator.
I want to say he almost had a name for it. He called him something that almost sounded like a pet name. Like, it's like, yeah, Charlie's at it again. Got to go rescue a cast member from good old Chuck.
That's funny. All right. So we mentioned at the top of the podcast that your mom had spent some time working along in Disney, and while Walt was there. I don't really have specific questions, more of, do you have
the whole story?
Yeah, well, you don't have to tell me the whole story, but if you could tell me, tell us
I know
few
basics
good
of it.
stories.
There's 2 good stories that she always tells because she worked there. So he died in 1966. She worked there after graduating high school from 1965 to 1970. So she knew him she worked with him regularly for that last year of his life, unfortunately, although he wasn't there a whole lot because of health reasons, but she saw him all the time and interacted with him. She started as a guest relations secretary for Adventureland, Frontierland, and New Orleans Square under Ron Dominguez and Dick Nunes. And Dick Nunes eventually, if I'm not mistaken, became the president of Disneyland. Ron Dominguez and Dick Nunes both have windows on Main Street. The Dominguez family was the family that lived on the property that Disney bought it from, and his tree is still there. It's called the Dominguez tree. It's over in Adventureland. But he was their youngest son, and he worked at the park from when it opened till I think he just passed away a couple of months ago. But he was there forever. But when she started, they were both just young guys, just 2 managers flying by the seat of their pants. But she was the general secretary for guest relations for those 3 lands. And through her time with Walt, you have to kind of remember that at that time, there was no real screening process for phone calls. The Disneyland number wasn't a protected number like it is today, where you can't just like call the park. It doesn't happen. It's almost laughable to think that it did happen at one point, but people would call all the time because at the time they didn't really know what they didn't know. They were just kind of naive, like everyone else is when you're flying by the seat of your pants with a theme park that's never been designed like that before. And so people would call all the time and ask for Walt or impersonate Walt. Or you have to remember at that time, he's the most famous person arguably on the planet. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew his movies. The park had been open for 10 years at that point when she started. So he was a giant figure in pop culture. And so they got tons of crank calls all the time. So she and her team would have to answer a lot of them because she was in charge as a secretary for 3 of the lands. And so one time she got a phone call and it was, hey, Jolene, it's Walt. Can you put me through to Dick Nunes? And she went, yeah, right. And she hung up or something of that sort. Well, fast forward about an hour and Walt walks through the door and says, Jolene, why'd you hang up on me? And she went scarlet and realized that she had hung up on Walt Disney himself. And now he was calling her out in front of everybody. And she said he was the nicest person. Everything that you've ever read or seen about him was genuine. That's not a show. Like, yeah, he could get upset with things and he would get frustrated if things weren't going as fast as he wanted them to, because his brain went a mile a minute. But all the way he acted, the way you see him interact with cast members, with guests, that was the real deal. He was that emotional. He was that caring, that kind of grandfatherly. And he was not mad at all. He laughed about it. He made fun of her for it a little bit, and then went on with his day with it. And, it stuck with her forever. And she was mortified by it. And she went, oh my gosh, Mr. Disney, I'm so sorry. And he went, it's fine. Call me Walt. It happens all the time. And it was just one of those things that in hindsight, it's like, Mom, you hung up on Walt Disney? Like, are you kidding me? And she's like, I didn't mean to. It's not like I did it on purpose. But it's one of those things that, it's a pretty cool story to tell people you thought it was a prank call and hung up on him. So after a couple of years in guest relations, she ended up going or as a secretary, she went and ended up in guest relations proper as a tour guide. And she took people all around the parks. She took Barbra Streisand around. She took Louis Armstrong around. A lot of famous people, Yul Brynner, a lot of famous people at that time. And she had a blast. One of the other story that I'll tell you is that she was there late at night, and Walt would stay there at the firehouse, above the firehouse where his office was, that he would oversee everything. And Walt, like a lot of adult men at that time, liked to drink, especially at the end of the day, especially with all the stuff that was on his plate, figuratively and, you know, metaphorically, with all the stuff he had to deal with. And he would drink black and white. I think it was a type of gin. And he ran out of it. He would, especially because he was entertaining a lot of clients or a lot of guests, which is why they made Club 33 to wine and dine investors to get money for the park. So he was always dealing with other people. So they would, much like in Mad Men, they would drink a lot over the stuff, over these business deals. And so he wanted some more alcohol, and he didn't have any in his office. So he radioed down to my mom at the time. She might have still been in guest relations at Adventureland and New Orleans Square and that stuff. But the way she told it, I seem to have remembered that she was in guest relations proper. But either way, she called down and said, you know, Jolene, I need a bottle of black and white brought up to my office. Thanks, click. And when Walt says that, it's not like, hey, there's no question. You're doing what he's asking you to do. And she called him. He called later at night when most of the places are closed. And I remember before he hung up, she was like, Mr. You know, she'd always call him Mr. Disney. He'd correct her. It was like their little joke. And she said something along the lines of like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it. And he's like, oh yeah, just have one of the maintenance guys. Just go get it. Okay, click. Like, hey, you figure this out. This is not my deal. This is why I pay you guys to figure this out. For it. Exactly. So she calls one of the maintenance guys, because those are the only people that were left in the park at that time, outside of guest relations. And it's this older gentleman, Homer, who had worked on guest relation or on Main Street in maintenance forever. He was one of Walt's dearest friends. He was a little bit older than Walt, but they both loved the train. They both loved the jalopies on Main Street. They were always together on Main Street because Walt wouldn't really go on the rides. He would mainly just sit on the benches in Main Street with popcorn and watch the guests. So she called Homer and said, hey, Homer, it's Jolene. I don't know if you can help me, but Walt needs a bottle of black and white, and I don't know how to get it. And he said you could figure it out. And so he's like, yeah, maybe. So she calls back up and is like, hey, I think I can get Homer to potentially get this. And he's like, oh, yeah, just have him take one of the vehicles on Main Street and go get it. Thanks, Jolene. Click. And so she relays that to Homer, and he's like, okay. So he takes the keys to one of the jalopies that rides up and down on Main Street, not an actual vehicle, and literally has to drive it out of Disneyland to the liquor store that's right down the road, going on regular roads on a jalopy from Main Street to go to a liquor store to get alcohol for Walt Disney and bring it back. And she's like, I just don't want you to get pulled over or arrested. And he's like, well, what am I going to say? I'm getting alcohol for Walt Disney.
Right.
And he's like, I'm in a Main Street jalopy that even in 1965 was 30, 40 years old, because they're designed to look like cars from the 20s and 30s, you know, something akin to like a Model A, but like a longer version of it. It's made to look ridiculous. So you're driving down streets of Anaheim, California in 1965 in a jalopy at 9 o'clock at night to pick up alcohol for the most famous man on the planet. But she said he was amazing. And it was that kind of, and I hear a lot of the same stories from all the documentaries that we've all seen, where Walt just had this kind of hypnotizing way of being like, I need this done. You'll figure it out. Click.
Yeah, right.
And guys would be like, okay. And then they'd start to have anxiety attacks being like, how do I actually get this done? But they believed that they could do it because Walt believed they could do it.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny that she worked there for 5 years or so and had an amazing time taking guests around and working guest relations. She still talks about her time there a lot. I mean, she's a bit older now, so she's not as crazy about Disney as we are, but I was raised with it all. I was raised with all these stories. We still, until recently, we still had friends that worked at Disneyland, although they've since retired. But my aunts worked there, so it was kind of in the family blood, that it was always something told to me as I was younger, like, wouldn't it be cool if you worked there because your mom and aunts worked there? So when once we moved to the East Coast, I was like, well, I guess I'm never going to work at Disney because we're in New England and, about as far from a Disney park as you could possibly get. So when the college program opportunity opened up, it was like, well, this might be the only time I get to do this as something other than a guest. So I leapt at that. And I was really thankful that I got to not only be accepted, but got to do a pretty awesome job, because there's lots of people that work there that, if you're working in Fantasyland all the time, that can be overwhelming.
I find it interesting, before we move on to the final segment here, I just find it interesting that Walt ran out of alcohol. Like, you would just, in my mind, it would just be
it's
like
just there.
This room that would have a
magically appear.
Insane amount of alcohol in it,
Yeah. I mean, he didn't
and
do
maybe
it
there
all
was.
the time. He didn't do it all the time, but it sounds like I'm telling a disparaging story about Walt. It's not like he was sitting up there just getting drunk. He was probably attending or working with a business meeting because he was wining and dining investors all the time. Disneyland was constantly trying to stay above the line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they basically brought ABC out of the gutter to compete with NBC in the 50s, just so that ABC would help fund the park to get it off the ground. So Walt was consistently and constantly trying to meet with investors. At the time that my mom worked there, and for the 10 years before then, everything was sponsored. Even when I worked there, Space Mountain was sponsored by FedEx.
Yeah.
It's since been rebranded to, I don't know what it is now, but at Disneyland here, the last time I went a couple of years ago, the Autopia was sponsored by Honda.
Yep.
I mean, they still are trying to do that. Any way they can try and get extra revenue is fine by the company if you can do it. I think they kind of frown on it now, as opposed to how blatant it was back in the 50s and 60s when they were struggling for money, whereas now they just print money.
Yep.
But it was always something that Walt was on the lookout to do, which is why they made Club 33, to get investors in there, spoil them with the show and everything that's there, and make it super secretive and secret society, and make you feel special, in the hopes that you give your money and we can make this park.
It's funny because even when I first started going, like in the 80s and early 90s, there was I feel like, especially Epcot, like almost every ride was sponsored back then.
Yeah.
Like the Universal Energy was Exxon, and AT&T was Spaceship Earth, and
Test
Kodak.
track with Chevy when it first opened.
Yeah, it still is. I think it still is Chevy. No?
It's maybe it was GM when it first opened. Chevy was along the way. I don't know if it's now or then, but Chevy was a sponsor and GM was a sponsor. I like the original Test Track when it was going through the crash test dummy stuff. I thought that was much more engaging. Although my son loved the new one where you could design essentially a Hot Wheel car.
Yeah.
I get it, but it's not.
I'm man that one.
Yeah, whatever.
And he had Kodak over at Imagination. I think Nestle does Nestle still sponsor the Land Pavilion? Maybe it did at one time.
It does have a sponsor. I was going to say it does have a sponsor because we were there recently.
Yeah. Yep. So there's still remnants of it, and we were doing a little.
I just think it's kind of slimy now, so they try and shy away from that, or they don't mention it as much. Whereas before, everything was they had almost like they would work in advertising, they would work in branding to the ride. Like the end of Space Mountain, now it's a walkway, but it used to be the conveyor belt. And you'd get on the conveyor. You'd get on the conveyor. I liked it because I hate the ramp now. It just goes on you don't realize how long it is until you have to walk it.
I know, but when people would get on the thing and just stand there and ride it, that would drive me nuts. And I couldn't get by them. I hated that.
I would purposely put my arms on both rails so you couldn't get by. No, but anyway, you would see all of those scenes would be like different FedEx things. And you would see it on the People Mover when you would go through the certain scenes. It would be like delivering FedEx, delivering packages all over your galaxy or something like that. Something silly where they would work it in.
I remember that, all that stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
The People Mover is still sponsored. I forget by who. I forget by who, but remember, Johnny, we talked about it.
It needs a better sponsor because the damn thing hasn't worked. And
yeah. What's up, guys? It's Tim. Just here to remind you to check out our new website, quickdiztakes.com. We cover everything Disney, from our newest videos to our newest podcast, blog posts by contributors, and much more. And while you're there, do not forget to subscribe for the latest notifications on when new blog posts are posted and new videos go up. Of course, check out our YouTube page, Quick Diz Takes, and our Facebook page, Quick Diz Takes, along with Twitter at Quick Diz Takes for me and at Palm Tree Skook for Sarah, Instagram at Quick Diz Takes Tim, and at Quick Diz Skook. And of course, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe with friends. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show. Anyway, we've been going on for quite some time, so let's do, one of our more, I like to think one of our more popular segments of our regular show is putting these random celebrities that we pick every week into a Disney park. And because I know the three of us, along with my wife, who's not on the show, but was helping me with ideas, love Mr. Steve Perry. And for those of you who do not know who Steve Perry is, he is the former lead singer of
Shame
Journey.
on you if you do not know who Stephen Perry is.
I think he needs no introduction. And I thought it'd just be kind of fun to put him, anywhere, Disney World, Disneyland, whatever you got.
I think the obvious one is Great Moments with Stephen Perry.
Oh. Is this
where you just go into an auditorium and he sits in a chair and then rises out and starts belting out Wheel in the Sky or Don't Stop Believing.
So is that your idea?
You can't really go wrong with that. He's the paying attraction there. No one's going to see Neil Sean.
Oh, come on. Neil Sean's classic too, though.
You'd have to get his approval to play the music, I guess.
Tapping the frets.
Maybe it'd be cool to bring him back to Alien Encounter and he gets teleported into your scene and he's in the glass tube and then he sings so loud that it shatters and that's how he gets out.
That's a retrofit, literally. You could I guess you could put him where Sunny Eclipses as well.
That was my first thought.
Yeah.
Was like the obvious one is Sunny Eclipse, and then I don't know if you guys know this, but the stage raises. They used to do it back in the day. They don't really do it too much anymore because it's just costly and time consuming. But you could have like Steve Perry as Sunny Eclipse, and then have the rest of Journey come out from under the stage.
Oh my god, it's like a duo.
And then your wife Carrie would just like faint.
Yeah.
And that guy would have to come with the flashlight and shoo her away. Like, ma'am. We have another fainter because the legend of Steve Perry has grown.
Steve Perry, or just God, the guy could go anywhere. You have to talk about it. Like you could be a skipper on Jungle Cruise and just sing the script.
Skipper Steve, yeah,
Yep,
of course.
That'd be amazing.
You could have him be the Hatbox Ghost.
He could be.
Just have his little head pop into the box and just shout. That'd be great. Have him be the auctioneer in Pirates.
Yep. Put him at the end of Toy Story.
Show him your
Sleepy Dog
starboard
Dash.
side. Show him your larboard side and then bust out and like Don't Stop Believing in the middle of Pirates.
Jeez.
Or he could be the guy he could be Carlos drowning in the well. Don't
Yep.
tell him, Carlos. And then pull him up on the little rope and he starts like belting out Separate Ways.
What?
It just works, Tim. It just works.
You could sing "Still They Ride." You can sing.
Yeah.
Was it Wheels of Fire? I'm sorry. On the People Mover, as the people continually ride 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah. Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, as he's part of Carousel of Journey. The Journey of Progress. Oh my God, we just sold itself. The Journey of Progress, starring Steve Perry. Great Big Beautiful Steve Perry.
We literally redo the entire ride. It's just the evolution of Journey, like before Steve Perry, during Steve Perry, and then with this new guy there. Yeah.
And then everyone gets off. Everyone has a chance to get off before that last part.
Yeah. Johnny likes the last part.
No.
Johnny. I was editing that podcast.
I will agree with Johnny in the sense that if I close my eyes, he sounds a lot like Steve Perry. He's got a great voice, but it's David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar, where it's like, no, one of these guys is Van Halen, the other's Sammy Hagar.
Mm-hmm. Johnny, what's your Steve Perry?
Yes, tell us, Johnny.
I know he's thought about it.
I got two.
He's got two. See?
And I mean, now that we covered every ride, so we limited all your options.
No, mine's Streetmosphere in Hollywood Studios, where
you're
gonna get Steve
you can't
Perry.
even say with a straight face.
You're gonna get Steve Perry and Journey, and it's gonna be that Separate Ways video, and they're just gonna walk up and down Hollywood and Sunset Boulevard. And, well, first you're gonna see the girl with the white jacket. She's gonna be your beacon. You're gonna see her walking, and all of a sudden,
Stupid
the
video.
band walks out. They're playing their.
It could be the group in Tower of Terror.
They're
that gets
playing their
electrified
invisible,
at the-
their invisible
Yeah,
instruments, just belting out separate ways.
Oh, where they's doing the keyboard like, oh,
Yeah.
fantastic, Johnny, fantastic.
Who came up with that idea? It was terrible.
Great.
There's
A little
On-
of both, I guess.
on one bus when you leave the parks. No, how would it be on one bus? It's going. No, it's one bus throughout the whole park, and if you're lucky enough to go on this bus, you walk
The
in the
Journey bus?
and it's just Steve Perry sitting there on the it's an animatronic. Steve Perry sitting in the
Just thought
front
of something.
from the Faithfully video before he shaved the mustache off,
Oh my god,
just singing faithfully on your
those
bus ride.
videos are so bad.
But it's
Scott Avila would never get off the bus. He'd have to get shoot out with a flashlight.
if you're lucky enough to get on that bus, you get a nice
God,
show for your ride back to the resort.
How did none of us say? Yeah, it just popped in my head. There's a ride called Journey into Your Imagination. How are they not in that?
Right? With Steve Mint.
Feature no or Figment. Well, let's take Eric
Steven.
Idle out of there, and we'll make
Yeah.
Steve Perry the new Doctor, and they'll go through. Imagine how amazing the rendition of. Well, Figment's gonna have to step his game up because if he's gonna harmonize with Steve Perry.
Would it be like a little dragon with a Steve Perry head? Little wings fluttering around.
Could be. Could be.
like
And then at
that.
the end, when it goes dark, and then like you get that, blow of smoke there, and the thing drops down. You get that big scene. It would have to be like a stage, like Journey live in Houston, what year is that?
You-
84
you-
or whatever
You
it
put
is.
it in
84?
Japan, the
Escape
Live from
Tour.
Tokyo album.
Live from
There you
Tokyo
go.
album.
Back in
Put
Japan,
them in the Haunted
Circle,
Mansion, and each
Circle
one
Vision.
of the stretching room portraits is like all the members of Journey, like on each other's shoulders, like the guys in the quicksand. And they say, "Oh, you could take my way out," and Steve Perry drops from the ceiling singing.
And he has to have that leopard. Ever seen that
Yeah, of
leopard?
course. That's the only
yellow-
outfit.
The yellow leopard, yeah.
It's the
That's
only
the
outfit.
only outfit. I
So-
guess he could be in the Jungle Cruise wearing that outfit when you go through like the savannah of Africa. He's just wearing the leopard print outfit singing. That'd be fantastic.
So my idea is like, we came up with better ones as we just kind of, spitfired them around. But what my original idea was, just because I love the idea of him singing the song and all that kind of thing, was to have him in DCA working the Ferris wheel. And then every time he started the Ferris wheel, you would get,
Fantastic. You can't go wrong with that. You can't go
and
wrong with that.
when I said that, it cracked my wife up, and I was like, that's a winner right there. So that's what I'm going with. And I guess he has to have an animatronic, because obviously, unless Steve Perry's going to work there full time.
It's just Steve Perry.
Yeah, it's just a Steve Perry animatronic, like at the end of Slinky Dog, and he's got his little mic.
Yeah.
And obviously, the Imagineers would find his most iconic poses and have him,
It's
have
the,
it. Yeah,
the loving, like eyebrows inclined up, closed, the hand up, singing faithfully or something. Yeah. So you're gonna
That
go with
sound like
that. I'll go with great moments with Stephen Perry.
great moments with Steve.
And then Johnny can have the going down Hollywood studios, man. That's
I
fantastic.
actually like that idea, but
That's
I want.
fantastic. I love it.
I think Andy should be required to email me a script onto what Steve Perry would talk about for, I don't know, what was it, 10-minute show duration? Because
He
I would
gets
be
up to
very
announce-
interested.
Gettysburg Address and throws it aside and just goes into Wheel in the Sky.
He's like dressed like Abe Lincoln, and then he rips the thing off, and he's got the leopard.
It's like an NBA warm up suit that he just rips off and has the leopard print on.
That's a belly shirt too, isn't it?
Of course, and like the
Yeah.
tightest jeans that are like literally, figuratively, or both painted on him,
And
or leather pants. It might be black leather pants. I don't know.
I'm completely convinced that he would, like, if he was invited back to Journey and actually wanted to go, he would rock that outfit again if he were to, get back on stage.
I'm surprised he didn't do it when the White Sox won the World Series and he got called up to do it. I was like, dude, you missed an opportunity, man. Come on.
I don't
It's
know, maybe
almost like what is
he's
it
a little more
like
tame.
Pee Wee Herman when he goes in his closet and it's all the gray suits. It's like he goes into his closet and it's all just leopard print and shirt.
I wonder what it's like. This is the last thing I say about Steve Perry, but like, you look at pictures of yourself, right? And you always kind of like put your head in your hands, like, oh man, I can't believe he used to dress like that. These guys, or Steve Perry in particular, they can just go on YouTube anytime they want and just see all the embarrassing fashions
Imagine everything you've ever done.
Hair, although he still kind of has the
being
hair.
available in popular culture for consumption at all times. It's
And
like
maybe-
paralyzing and amazing at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe with these podcasts that Johnny and I do all the time now, 20 years from now, we can look back and see how terrible we look now.
I don't know why you don't wear a leopard shirt to all of these.
I should have at least worn it tonight for theming purposes. I didn't even think about it. Shame on me. Actually, the guests should have wore it, I think.
This would have been great moments with Johnny and Tim.
We could have had like each of us should have wore a variation of like what's
I would have been the keyboarder.
missed opportunity. Yeah, we should have started the show with like separate ways playing. None of us have mics, and then all of a sudden like a mic appears and headsets appear or something
fantastic.
like that. Yeah, it's amazing.
I think Steve Perry should just be in every ride.
Yeah.
Every little animatronic in Small World should be little Steve Perry.
Oh man, Johnny, would you like Small World then? 'Cause if Steve Perry were performing it?
It's a world of love.
I don't know.
Johnny hates that song. He
I don't
talks
know
about it
about
all the
that.
time.
Imagine crooning that as like a power ballad, though.
Maybe it's a power ballad. Yeah.
Imagine him sing.
It wouldn't repeat as much because
Yeah,
he dragged.
he
out.
would drag it out.
He could actually sing the second verse that they don't even play in the ride. And
You could have Rock and Roller Coaster with Steve Perry. Like, come on.
with Johnny in general, I guess.
Yeah, but they're second banana. That's
Yeah, he's
the
solo.
recording
Steve.
studio when he does the Steven Tyler. Like, oh, I think a stretch limousine.
Yeah,
That pre-show would be fantastic. G-Force Records. It would just be like J-Force Records.
yep.
Fantastic.
And I want to hear like the acapella in the beginning of Oh Sherry as I'm about to be launched.
Yeah,
I should
exactly.
have been gone. Gone.
Yep.
I
should have been gone.
I get a little excited there. Sorry.
It's fantastic.
Imagine him singing this.
All of these work.
That could be amazing too.
They're all little Steve Perry birds that come down.
Steve with little mullets.
A little leopard print over their wings.
He could have like one of the animatronic leopards could be like dead in Jungle Cruising, and it could show where he skinned it.
He could be the goat on the top of Big Thunder with the dynamite,
man.
just like holding dynamite, singing "Wheel in the Sky" as you go around Big Thunder.
God,
It works in every ride. He serenades you on the paddle wheel boat. It's
Yep.
fantastic.
It is. I could talk about this for hours, but I will not. I will not. All right. So we mentioned Andy is a professional voiceover actor. Is there anything you want to plug here, Andy, or tell the people where they can find you if they need you?
Sure. If you want to, you can go to my website. It's www.andymackvoice.com. So that's ANDYMACKVOICE.com. I'm on Twitter at AndyMackVoice. And stop on by. Say what's up. Enjoy the games that I'm in. They're a lot of fun.
Nice. And I will put that link in the description below as well.
Thank you.
So thanks, Andy, for coming on and telling lots of stories. Lots of
You're welcome.
fun stories.
I'm gonna go shoo away my family with a flashlight now.
Yeah, he's gonna go shoot. He's yeah. Oh man. I'm still thinking about Steve Perry. Sorry.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
One more time.
Yeah.
All right. That's enough of
Fantastic.
that. We're gonna get out of here. Thanks again, Andy. And we will talk to you guys next week on another quick Diz Takes podcast. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks for having me, you guys. This was awesome.